Welcome to Malaga and continuing YouTube coverage of the second Global Photonics Economic Forum. On October 7th and 8th, 2025, Optica gathered the world's most influential executives together. Here's the complete version of one of the 8 keynotes. Enjoy. It's time now to welcome Marisa Edmund, Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of Edmund Optics. Marisa is the third generation to lead this family company, which has grown into a global player in optics and photonics. Today, she will address how Edmund Optics is navigating a shifting geopolitical landscape, where export restrictions, tariffs, and defense priorities are reshaping supply chains. She will share how a family-owned company, rooted in agility and customer focus, can thrive under these new conditions. Recent moves include acquiring German precision optics firm Sarnex, thus expanding capabilities from microcomponents to meter-scale parts, and opening a new European hub in Best, the Netherlands, to cut lead times and improve service across the EU. Her keynote will highlight entrepreneurship and leadership in photonics, balancing heritage, innovation, and growth in a world of change. Please join me in welcoming Marisa Edmund.
Hi, good morning. Wow, what a beautiful venue, what a beautiful city. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much, and thank you certainly to Optica and all of the staff in the room for hosting this amazing event. It's going to be fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to the next few days getting to meet everyone in the audience and continue with the themes we've talked about already, which is around collaboration and partnership in what is one of the most amazing industries I've ever been a part of. So let's get started. We're going to continue with the theme of innovation. We're going to talk a little bit about when you innovate, how you innovate, why you innovate, who you include, and how critical it is for your business. We're going to start first and kind of do that through the lens of my family story, which is Edmund Optics, and talk about how it got started, when and why that innovation was so important. So let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. And that is in the 1940s, my grandfather, Norman Edmund, actually contracted tuberculosis. So back in the 40s, if you got tuberculosis, you went to a sanitarium and you spent your time there. What did you do? Well, he got involved in photography and he learned all about optics and lenses because that's how you kill time in a sanitarium when you have nothing else to do. And he started training all the different nurses and the people in the facility about photography and optics. So very interesting. When he was finally released, the only place he was allowed to work was at the Franklin Arsenal. At the Arsenal, he was taking apart surplus optics, deciding if they could be used again, deciding if they were trash, if they could be bought or sold, or what would happen. And eventually, that's when he got the idea to start an optics company. But you can imagine, and Jim talked about it in the opening keynote, and that is, what an unbelievable time of uncertainty in the 1940s, right? Geopolitical uncertainty, certainly lots of uncertain things going on in your community, in your home, in your cultures, and trying to understand how we navigate that. But that was the time when he got started, right? Probably we had nothing, right? As a family, we couldn't even put food on the table. And during that period, he said, well, you know what? This is the time to innovate. This is the time to get started. Because you know what? There's never a great time. And that was his time. So he got started on that business and started collecting inventory from the sanitarium. He put it in actually in our family's bathtub in their house, and that's where they got started. He then started contracting for local garages from his friends, and he would put the inventory there. Started the first catalog. A couple hundred catalogs, went to 1,000 catalogs, went to 1 million catalogs were being sent in the 1950s. And one interesting thing here, too, is that he decided to get a truck, and he decided he was going to start making these deliveries himself. Why would he do that, right? Why would he spend his time there? Well, he spent the time there because it meant he could talk to his customers. he could say, what are you doing with these optics? And he started to learn about all the different applications that people were using optics in. And it was fascinating, far beyond what he could have ever thought people would be doing. So that continued. So he hired people, he developed educational content. His mission became teaching the next generation about optics, about becoming an optical engineer, about getting into this field, building your own telescope, starting to get hands-on with optics. That continued. We had a retail store and eventually culminated in some really exciting things like our optics going to the moon in 1969 on the Apollo 12 mission. So some neat things along the way. But what's so important in any business and in any global economy, and that is there's inflection points, right? There's inflection points for all of your companies when you have to make a decision. Are we going to grow and change? Are we going to reinvent our brand every couple of years? Are you going to make those key decisions? Are you going to kind of hunker down and maybe just stay the course of what you're doing? And in some cases, people decide to de-invest, right? And that happens oftentimes in recessions. You see people pull their innovation, pull their R&D, stop their sales and marketing, and start a decline, right? So for us as Edmund Optics in the 1980s, we had a big inflection point. We were not doing great financially. We had accumulated a significant amount of debt. The consumer market was not performing. We had lots of competition. We started to bring in competition from Asia and different parts of the world. So my dad at that point had to make a big decision. Were we going to continue as a consumer brand, or were we going to reinvent ourselves? So the first thing he did was go out and talk to customers and try to understand what people were looking for from us as a brand. And what he learned was that people were looking for precision optics. They were looking to do a lot of new innovating and technology. And he said, all right, he said, despite being in the debt we're in, I'm going to go ask my friend John Plummer, who was in Pennsylvania at the time. He had a plant there, a plant in Singapore. And he said to John, he said, I'm out of money. He said, but if I don't reinvent this brand, Edmund's going to die. And John said, I'll help you, Robbie. And ended up funding our tech spec brand. My dad then reinvented the company essentially into an industrial company, going for high precision optics. We started to launch different and new brands. Through that, we started to get involved in manufacturing. And then we started our global expansion. And that was something where we wanted to go into each market. And here again, we wanted to talk to customers. We wanted to talk to customers in their language. We now operate in 13 different languages, 9 different currencies. But it was very important to get into those local facilities and those local customers and really talk to them about what were they doing? How were they innovating? That information then shaped all of the catalog products that we put in. And again, at that time, we were standard products. It helped us shape getting into manufacturing by understanding what customers needed at the time. And a quick aside, if I oftentimes get asked, what was it like to grow up Edmund? And I can assure you, as a child in this business, I say I've been working here for 49 years, you're involved in every single aspect of the company. And when your mom's in charge of marketing, you have the unbelievable honor of also being the catalog model for a period of your life. So I thought that was just a fun thing to show. But the key in all of this is that my dad didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it. And I think that's an important quote as we think about what happens and what changes over time. What I learned most, and my dad's still alive, he's retired in Naples, Florida, but that you have to make that connection, right? You have to go out and speak to customers, you have to localize, and you also have to innovate during uncertain times. During those inflection points, you have to harness them and make tough decisions that aren't popular, but they need to be done. And again, we've then been able to grow the company into something that looks very different than maybe it did back in my grandfather's surplus days. I'm really proud of some of our statistics. We have our 19 locations. We have distribution centers around the world. We now have global manufacturing around the world. Close to 1,250, almost 1,300 employees now at our different locations. The addition of Sonics, ultra-high precision diamond turning things that are going on for us now through that constant innovation and really making investments when they needed to be made and during uncertain times. That's a little snapshot of our global footprint. One of the other interesting things we did in the last year, too, to get closer to our customers was divisionalize the company. For most of my career, we were one large company, and we said it's really hard to communicate with customers. It's really hard to ensure that they know how to navigate our organization and that our staff get to speak with them closer to the application and what's going on. So we visualized into what is our classic marketplace that many of you know us for, being the catalog, the standard 34,000 products, 24/7 support. And then likewise, now we have our new division, advanced manufacturing, that caters to those 9 manufacturing plants, technical roadmaps on the different product categories. So that was a tough thing too, but again, closer to customers, right? Getting that feedback and then shaping your organization in a dynamic and adaptable way as you invent your brand over time. And again, that just features some of those manufacturing plants where we are today in the countries. We'll talk about that again. I think it's going to come up later this week as we talk about how do you mitigate tariffs, right? How do you mitigate some of the things happening? Well, you have a global footprint, right? You get yourself out there and you start localizing and making it available in different countries, different regions, and where your customers are based on what they're looking for. So let's get back to the concept of uncertainty, and let's talk about it as a catalyst for innovation today. We know that a lot of this starts in uncertain periods, resilient mindsets. We're going to talk a lot about adoption. We're going to talk about AI this week, what happens, and really how that disruption that's going on fuels our creativity, fuels the creativity within your teams on how we change things, how we go forward. And again, this week, that cross collaboration amongst the industries. All right, let's tie back to inflection points as well, because I think COVID was an inflection point for many of us in this room, right? Things changed dynamically overnight. We saw different applications pop up. We saw new things in agricultural development. We saw machines that were going out and zapping weeds because we couldn't have employees go out and do it. There wasn't staff. There weren't people out in the fields and literally doing some of the jobs that had historically been done. For most of us, right, we stopped seeing doctors, right? Everybody in this room, you stopped seeing a doctor. We went in and we did televisits. That happened overnight. We went from a couple hundred televisits in the US to millions of televisits in a couple days. We can imagine the innovation that happens behind that at an inflection point like COVID. We also started all the amazing technology that's going to be based on AI. A lot of that came quickly to the surface throughout COVID and just after. I know for us specifically, things that we got involved in, we doubled down during COVID in our investment, in our M&A, and in our technical roadmap, and that's enabled us to get into new and emerging markets that we think are important to the company and the future. Okay, so that's a little bit of the when and some of the story of Edmund and how it's worked out for us. But what I really want to talk about here today is how you innovate. How do you do that? How do you galvanize your team to get to the best idea? How do you accelerate it? How do you do that collaboration? So let's talk about it, and let's share some stories and even historical stories, because I think those provide us with great learning. When I was in college, this book came out, The Wisdom of Teams. I hope you've read it. It's a classic. And it was really the first time I really got to understand what it meant to bring a team together. How do you put those roles in? How do you make sure there's room for every voice in the conversation? This book was then followed by another book called The Wisdom of Crowds, and I recommend that book as well. But they all share the same theme, and that is how do you get your entire team involved? So I'll give you an example. 1968, naval vessel Scorpion, on its way back from a transatlantic journey, coming back to Newport News, it goes missing. Navy can't find it. Nobody knows what happened, right? Pretty horrible situation. They bring in a team of people to look at it. The team decides that the vessel Scorpion probably went down in a 20,000 square mile radius, depths up to several thousand feet. Sounds like an impossible task, doesn't it? Sounds pretty impossible to find that ship. So they put a man, John Craven, in charge of it. And John Craven said, you know what, I could do what you normally do, and I could go out and get a bunch of naval experts, people who have done this before, submarine captains, and I can ask them and we could try to figure out. But he said, I don't think that's going to be good enough, and I don't think it's going to go fast enough for what I'm trying to do. So instead, he said, listen, I'm going to come up with a bunch of scenarios, and I'm going to go out and ask a lot of people that maybe haven't traditionally been involved in something like naval rescue. I'm going to ask lifeguards. I'm going to ask the guys at the dock. I'm going to ask people who study currents, weather people. all sorts of people that were out there in the crowd that might have some understanding of what could have happened to this ship at that time. He took that information and he had them look at the scenarios. He had them give them their best guesses. He put the data collectively into what's called Bayes' theorem, and he tabulated, he calculated, and eventually he came up with a location. It wasn't the location from any single individual. It was the collective intelligence of the crowd, if you will, the collective intelligence of the team that he had assembled. They gave that point to the Navy. They found the ship 5 months later, 220 yards from the point at which John Craven and the team had said it would be. That's about 200 meters. Pretty amazing, right? And I think it demonstrates that when you ask the collective team, when you crunch that data, when you go out and talk to people that maybe you hadn't considered before, you will innovate faster. You will get better information and you will get to your solution quicker. And you need to be open-minded to it. Likewise, and we've been talking about it throughout this, we have to talk to customers. I was rather shocked in the book, The Growth Leader, to read this. Nearly 9 out of 10 CEOs, or 80%, are completely or significantly disengaged or misaligned with sales when it comes to determining the direction of their company. Wow, that's pretty shocking information, especially for a lot of us sitting here in this room as CEOs. The book goes on to infer that 80% of CEOs haven't visited a customer in 3 to 5 years. Wow. Okay, well, let's hope that's not true for the photonics industry. But again, it's kind of a wake-up call, right? It's a wake-up call to make sure we stay connected to our customers, that we're out meeting with them, and not just the tertiary high at trade shows, right? We need to be on site. We need to be at our customers' facilities. We need to be asking questions of operators, of people in the industry. What are they doing? How are they using our products? That will help us innovate faster. And again, it wasn't popular to go and do this during COVID, but many of us were out there asking those questions and meeting with customers during it. So what kind of sales experience are we as CEOs giving the customer? I think we need to think about that. Likewise, I have the unique opportunity of having a board of directors, and that's another place we can leverage ideas. It's another way in which we can innovate faster. So I encourage you to use your boards. Also, one unique thing for us, we're a family-owned company. We're a privately held company. The family owns 90% of it. And while you may not think, hey, I'm going to go ask my family for their business opinion on what I do with my strategy, I do. We have an entire family council. They give me unbelievable insight about what the family should be doing, about how the company should be innovating. We bring in speakers. We're talking about grant writing at our next family council meeting this week. So all sorts of interesting information can be gleaned from perhaps sources where you least expect it. So include your board, not only in the risk tolerancing, but how you're innovating. What does your technical roadmap look like? What do they think about it? And if you get the opportunity, sometimes family is important too. So I'm going to end with one final thought, and that is, do what is right, not what's easy, and not what is popular. You know, my grandfather in the 1940s, when he came home and told my grandmother that he was going to start a business, quit his job, that probably wasn't a popular idea, I'm guessing, at the family dinner table. But it was the right thing, and it wasn't easy. And his road to innovation and how he started was filled with challenges. I know when my dad took over the business, again, a lot of difficult times, almost on the brink of declaring bankruptcy in some cases. And the decisions that had to be made at those inflection points, right? When he said, I'm not doing consumer anymore, we're going to do industrial. That wasn't a popular or easy decision to make. I know in my own career in the last 30 years of actively managing the company and recently as CEO and chairman, we make a lot of tough decisions. The decision to divisionalize the company, that was not an easy decision. There's a lot of people who said, don't do that. A lot of staff that push back, but it's the right decision and it's a hard one. And it needs to continue to provide the support and the growth for the company. Likewise, we make a lot of tough decisions about leadership, right? All of us in this room make decisions about who's running your innovation, who's managing those inflection points. Those are not easy decisions. You're probably not popular when you make them, but sometimes they're the right ones, and I would encourage you to keep doing it. And I think my last final thought is that this week, how do we leverage our time together? We've talked about collaboration. We've talked about partnership. This industry has better partnership than I have seen in any industry throughout my entire career. And it's challenging, but that's how we accelerate, right? That's how we get to places. That's how we build our global footprint, is by working together. And it's fortunate that the Optica has brought us here together to do that. So again, I encourage you to do what's right. I encourage you to innovate, speak to your customers, work with your entire team. You might not be popular, and it's not going to be easy, but I believe we can do it, and we can do it together in the spirit of collaboration in this amazing industry that is photonics. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marisa, for coming to Malaga. The first question is obvious. We want to help you. We have seen the organic and inorganic growth of Edmund Optics, the acquisition of Sonex. There are many interesting companies here. You met already Fermat. You're going to meet Optics. There's really interesting companies. How do you decide how to help the companies, whether you acquire them, you offer your platform for them to grow and sell more?
Okay, so how do we find companies, or how do
you decide
how do I decide? Yeah, well, that's a tough question. We do a lot to understand, the beauty of a marketplace platform, and hopefully you've been to the Edmund Optics website, is we have the ability to bring on partnerships and test ideas, right? With 34,000 products, I can bring on smaller companies' ideas, and we can put them out there, and we can see what the market says. We can see what customers say about an idea that a partner or a vendor company might have. And I can tell you in a year if that idea or new product is going to stick, and if customers want it. And that typically decides who I partner with, Jose, because the customers decide for us, right?
Marisa is open for questions, so please raise your hand and tell us your name and company. In the meantime, Marisa, Edmund Optics is a manufacturer. It's a manufacturer of optics. And there are many regions that are here represented, like Creole from David Hagan in Florida, Photon Delta in Eindhoven, Felipe Romera in Malaga. What is your strategy for enabling manufacturing in other locations? As I'm sure your customers need that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our plan is to continue to expand our global manufacturing footprint throughout the world. We'll be looking at Eastern Europe next. So again, if you're in that area and you'd like to collaborate, please let me know. I'm happy to have that conversation while you're here this week. But likewise, I think there's more unique opportunities throughout Asia. And then certainly in the US, it's going to be important right now for us to look at US manufacturing, where and how we develop that and how we partner together.
Yannick Roland, University of Rochester.
Academia in multiple places, in the US or in anywhere in the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I couldn't quite hear, but it was partnership with
the
academies.
role with academia.
Yeah.
With academies. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's
Academias.
incredibly important that between universities, academies, and our research centers that we develop that partnership. We do it already. We do grants and different programs. We're visible on a variety of campuses. We do a lot of internships and work with students. And we also help a lot of students test their concepts and ideas with us and get their products and ideas out there when they may not yet have production. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to do that collaboration and partnership. And it probably should be another area in this presentation in terms of the path to innovation, right? Working with students.
Marisa, in the US, we are always very proud of saying that we do optics for security and defense. We are proud of saying that. In Europe, there has been some kind of ways to evade that kind of comment. There were like civil companies and military companies. Now we are seeing that in Europe now, defense is driving lots of optics innovation. What advice do you give to companies in Europe, optics manufacturers, on how to embrace manufacturing optics for this very big, important market?
Yeah, I think this market is critical, and I think we'd be negligent to say that it's not burgeoning and obviously growing in Europe. And I think we need to embrace it. We need to understand how we can be a meaningful and constructive part of it. I think we need to invest in it. I also think for a lot of us, we need to understand the compliance that's required to best service this market. For American companies, we need to set up probably separate companies in Germany, places like that. But it's a complicated market, Jose, but it's one that we can service well. And I think we have a tremendous amount to offer to the industry. I also think there's a sense of urgency around it. I think if we don't act and get involved sooner than later, this market might pass us by or they might go with alternate technologies. It's important that we figure it out and we get excited about it and we get into it and start meeting with the experts and doing that level of collaboration that we know how to do with industries like life science and semi. I think we need to do more of it with defense and security, certainly in Europe and throughout the world.
We're going to have a panel on this very topic. Greg Walls, where are you, Greg? Here he is. Allow me to bring, this is one thing that we do at Optica events. We bring the microphone to the public. Greg, you have listened carefully to what advice Marisa Edmund was giving to the CEOs of our industry. From your perspective, for the European companies that are embracing now the defense market, what kind of advice could you give them?
I think Marisa is right on. I think you have to bring the technology to the customer base, and that alleviates some of the ITAR issues, export control challenges, and being able to manufacture at the doorstep of your customer really helps get the product into the field quicker for testing and have that route of innovation that takes place where you refine and put those technologies into place that are fieldable and ruggedized. So I think she's spot on there.
This is an excellent preview for the fantastic panel you're about to moderate. Marisa Edmund, thank you very much for coming to
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this keynote. If you found it useful, please comment below, repost, subscribe to this channel, and save the date for next year when we return to Malaga at the same time as ECOP.